Hey everyone, and thank you so much for joining us tonight. This is an awesome special event brought to you by the network. We have with us tonight Mr. David Sobel, attorney to the real estate investing celebrity status here in the Michigan and Ohio region. My name is Blair Clark, and I have the privilege, the honor of interviewing Mr. David Sobel tonight. David, how are you doing?
I'm great. Thanks, Blair. Thanks for having me. That's a hell of an introduction, Blair. Can you
Yes,
just come?
sir.
You should just come to my office, and every time I walk in, you give that intro.
It's
Or I just
David
replay
Sobel,
it.
everybody. Sobel in the
That's great.
house. Look
Yeah, I like
alive.
that. I
That's
like it.
right.
Thank you. How you
Yes, no,
doing?
you're so welcome. I'm doing really well. I'm actually really excited because we're going to be talking about one of my favorite topics tonight, which is seller financing. We're
Hmm.
going to launch into a barrage of questions that we have geared toward that topic. But really, really quick, I just want to give those who are watching tonight, if you need an awesome real estate attorney on your power team, someone who is investor focused, someone who is also an investor himself, so he knows what he's talking about, he practices what he preaches. David, how can the folks who are viewing at home get a hold of you if they need your services or your legal advice?
Well, thanks, Blair. It's really easy. You just can call. Anybody can call 888-789-1715. Also, we're on this network together on the Facebook group, which is a great group, very extensive and very active group. And that's another way that people can reach me is through Facebook. But we really prefer that people just give us a call at the phone number, 888-789-1715, or they can go to our website, which is provenresource.com, or you can just type in my name, David Sobel, into the URL. You can just put attorney, real estate attorney,
Mm-hmm.
and 9 times out of 10, I should pop up towards the
Yep.
top, at the top.
Google him and
Mhm.
he shall pop up. That's right. And guys, I have utilized David's YouTube channel quite a few times in the past. When I was learning about seller financing, specifically land contracts, I actually watched quite a few of David's videos before I went to him and asked any questions. I did some of my own research. So if you are interested in any real estate investing legal questions or finance or contracts or even estate planning, his specialty is all real estate related, but it's quite extensive. Head over to David's YouTube channel also. So if you go to YouTube and you just search for Sobel Law Proven Resource David Sobel, his YouTube channel will pop up, and
Right.
you'll see lots of videos just like this one where he answers all sorts of real estate related questions in depth and in detail. But they're short little brief snippets, like 6 to 15 minutes, where he just hones in on like a specific topic, and that's just a wealth of information, or at least it has been for me. So I just really encourage everyone to go there. Also, David has created quite a bit of content specifically for the network as well. So if you want to catch any of the podcasts that we made in the past pre-COVID, when we were able to actually get together and get around that round table, you can head over to our website. If you didn't know we have a website, go to michiganreinetwork.com, and you can find our podcast, and you can also find our brand new replay section. So most of the videos that we have made since we've had to go virtual a year ago due to COVID here in the network, like the workshop that I host virtually, the masterclass, the Detroit meetup, the Young Guns, the multifamily, the network main meetup, the whole gamut, that's going to be on the website as well, michiganreinetwork.com, and you can watch the replays that are posted there as well. So enough about the network. Let's get into the topic tonight. We're going to be talking about seller financing,
Mhm.
which is an awesome strategy for anybody to use, whether you're a general home purchaser or seller, or you are an investor like David and I. Seller financing is a strategy that I had set a goal to execute in 2019. I decided that in the following year, 2020, I wanted to learn about seller financing in 2019. I did a ton of study. I watched David's videos. And then in 2020, it was my goal to purchase properties with seller financing. And I was able to actually purchase 3 properties in 2020 using a seller financing instrument called a land contract, which is what we're going to really specifically talk about tonight, is land contracts. It's going to be like land contract palooza up in
Land contract palooza.
Land contract palooza. And that's not my word. That's actually David's word. I'm not stealing it from you.
No, I didn't create the word palooza.
Land contract palooza.
Palooza.
Exactly.
Anyways.
But before we dive into that, let's break it down for those who need just a little extension of their knowledge here. What exactly is seller financing, David? Can you explain to us, like, what even is seller financing?
It's just basically when like a real estate investor or a purchaser of a property usually doesn't have the ability to obtain financing from a bank, so they can't get a bank loan for a number of reasons. They may not have the time to wait, because a bank loan takes a while. They may not have the credit that's necessary for a bank to approve a loan. They may not have the income, or the property itself that an investor is looking at may not be conforming. It may not conform to whatever the guidelines are with the bank. So seller financing is a great vehicle for people to pick up property, for real estate investors to buy property when these variables affect either their ability to get financing, or they just don't want to deal with the banks at all. And you have a motivated seller who's willing to actually carry the note on their own to basically finance the property for the investor. That's it.
Okay.
Pretty much it. And the vehicle they use most often is a land contract. That's the instrument that most real estate investors will use.
I know a lot of people think of land contract and seller financing to just be this synonymous thing, but there are other seller financing vehicles that
you could get a mortgage,
take advantage of, right?
Yeah. So for purposes of the benefits of the seller, a seller really does not want to give a mortgage on a property to somebody who may not be tested or who may not be that credit worthy initially. So the best way for both parties to kind of dip their toes into a transaction would be this land contract. Some people would call it a contract for deed. In Michigan, we call it a land contract. But whatever it is, it's an arrangement. It's really a sales installment or installment sales agreement between the buyer and the seller. And both parties have usually less risk in this type of transaction than if, let's say, the seller were to provide a mortgage, and then where a buyer is going to get a mortgage from a bank, their risk is reduced because they're just dealing with usually an individual or a private entity that's giving them the financing. So it works for both parties. Okay, excellent.
It was, or it has been, a very resourceful tool for myself. So the reason why I had set that goal to purchase on seller financing, and moving forward, I would like to purchase on seller financing as often as possible, whether it's with a land contract or whether that seller agrees to do the mortgage, either way. And the reason why is A, I don't have to utilize the bank. B, I don't have to tap into my own capital. And then C, I also don't have to tap into my private lenders as well. So I have a small group of individuals who are willing to finance my deals, but they only have so much capital themselves.
Right.
So if I'm able to find a seller who is willing to sell to me on seller financing, then they in turn become really my private lender, because they're making
they're
making a return on it, and then they're becoming the bank. So it's been really, really resourceful to me. And I was able to purchase 3 in 2020. And because he was so motivated, this individual seller, I actually bought 3 properties from the same person, but he doled them out to me over the course of a year. Like we purchased and closed on one and got that rolling. And then the second one and then the third one, we actually closed on the second week of December. So it was literally like all year long, he kind of like rolled these properties out to me. He was very motivated. And so he was willing to sell to me on really great terms. And that's another thing I like about seller financing is, if you can find a motivated seller and you can have this like very professional, amicable back and forth, you can really hash out financing terms that are very favorable for both you and them. And that's
Right.
what I think is so beautiful. I didn't have to, get the property at a super deep discount
Mhm.
because the terms were so favorable to me. I was able to
Right.
actually give him what he wanted to. But like you said, it's payments and installments, so he doesn't get
Right.
everything right up front.
Mhm.
So it worked out. It worked out for me. And so that's really why
Right.
we're posting this here in the network tonight, is because seller financing land contracts will be a very resourceful tool in your toolbox as an investor.
Yeah.
So let's just launch into then. We broke down what is seller financing.
Mhm.
Let's take a look at then what exactly is a land contract.
Well, it's actually what we just mentioned it briefly.
Mhm.
It's actually the instrument that memorializes the seller financing arrangement between the buyer and the seller. And you mentioned something that was really important earlier, which was terms. The great thing about a land contract is both parties, buyer and seller, can negotiate terms that are favorable to both of them, that work for both parties. Or
Mhm.
usually it's going to be the seller who dictates the terms, right? But the land contract really, in the end, has to be agreed to by both parties.
Mhm.
Okay, so the land contract is the real estate document, the written document that will memorialize all these terms, such as what is the balance that's going to be lent on the land contract? What is the purchase price? What are what's the amortization? What's the interest rate? Is there a prepayment penalty? There's all these different things that will be negotiated and then placed into the land contract. It also has a very unique legal standing, to say the least. What that means is a buyer actually has an equitable interest in the property, okay, that they're buying, but they don't actually have a legal interest in the property until they actually pay off the property, okay, until they
Okay.
pay off the land contract. The seller retains the deed in a land contract. The seller still has a legal interest in the property and owns the property. There's been no conveyance at this point of their what we call fee simple interest. There's been nothing that's been transferred. There's been no legal title transferred. So the buyer has an equitable interest and the seller still has the legal interest. Once the buyer pays off the seller, the deed or the title will transfer, and now the legal interest goes into the buyer's name. Okay, so
Okay.
that's a plus when it comes to having a land contract. If you're giving somebody a mortgage, if a private investor is going to do a mortgage, guess what? They give up the legal right to the property. Now, if they have to, go after what we call default remedies are any legal remedy or any legal action that you have to take when a buyer or a mortgagor fails to make a payment, you got to go to court. Well, if you're the seller and you've given a mortgage to a buyer, guess what? You're going to be waiting. You have to do a regular foreclosure. There's a redemption period that can go from anywhere from 6 to 12 months. And you don't have legal title to that property anymore as the seller. Okay.
Mhm.
You're just the mortgage, you're like a mortgage bank. So the land contract basically gives the seller still the legal interest in the property. And if there's a default or any problem, the seller can then just do a forfeiture action, which is a 3-month redemption. So
I see.
but the
Mhm.
deed never changes. The interest of the property still remains legally in the seller's name, and that's a plus.
What happens to the deed in that meantime? Say you have a land contract for 5 years. So
Mhm.
for those 5 years, you the purchaser, as you're
Mhm.
paying it down, where is the deed at that point in time?
Well, a lot of people make the mistake that they leave the deed with the seller, or the deed's never been created, and they're relying on the seller to create that deed at the time that they pay off the land contract, which is the
Mhm.
biggest mistake you can make. The best place for a deed to be held is going to either be with an attorney at the attorney's office or at a title company at the title office. So either the attorney will function as like an escrow officer, or the title company functions as the escrow officer.
Mhm.
I hold on to these deeds for my clients, and we put them in a fireproof filing cabinet. Okay, so it's a Fire King, they call it. It's made out of cement. And when the buyer comes to pay it off, guess what? They call. It just happened yesterday. They call and they say, "Hey, we need the deed." And guess what? You don't have to chase the seller.
Yep.
Nobody, It's right there. There's no questions. But I will tell you, and I know that we've had this conversation on several of our sessions that we meet every couple of weeks. And that is because the market has been so active and property values have gone up substantially. It's really hard for a seller to let go of property, right, to a buyer who purchased a property, let's say 5 years ago when the market was still lower. So there's a lot of activity where the sellers are trying to withhold that deed and refuse to provide a payoff to their land contract purchaser. Okay, so that's a problem.
Right.
You
So
definitely want the deed in escrow.
So if you didn't catch that, what David is alluding to is, if you haven't noticed already, there's been such a spike in equity in properties, maybe nationwide, probably.
Yeah.
I mean,
Sure.
definitely here in Michigan. So what he means is if you negotiated for a land contract 5 years ago, you probably negotiated for, say, 100,000, but now, due to COVID and just the lack of supply of homes, that property could now be worth 130, and that seller knows it, and they are having a hard time swallowing that extra 30 grand that they're not really missing out on, but perception and psychology of perception plays a big role in the actions that people take. So that's probably why this is happening.
You have people, Blair, watching this who are real estate investors and that who are actually owning the property, who are going to generate the land contract as the seller. And then you have people who are watching who are going to be purchasing property. And this is a great vehicle for them, the buyer, right? But the thing is especially with the seller, right now it's so appealing to just withhold the deed or withhold the payoff because of the equity increase of these properties. But again, there's still legal remedies. These parties should have a contract. And that contract, which guides the relationship between buyer and seller, is called the land contract. So that's what the land contract does. Okay, we full circle right back to that.
Right. Good. Okay, so the second question that goes with that, and so I'm actually reading tonight. For those who don't know, I'm reading from a list of questions. Every other week, David and I actually get together over Zoom, and we go through all of the questions that are written into, not all of them, but a good portion of questions, the really good ones, the meaty ones that are written into his office. People call and email questions into David's office constantly. And so about a year ago, we started making YouTube videos where I fire off the questions to David and he answers them. And that's how so many real estate and finance, etc. questions get answered on his YouTube channel. So he got a barrage of specific land contract questions just within the past week. And so he put them together, and that's really kind of like the impetus for tonight's programming for you guys.